I will say it now, Guardian is better than people think. Early on, I was one of the people saying that Guardian is just plain bad. I wanted to like him, and I played a number of games with him early on because he has a cool character design. But I mostly left him behind after my early runs failed miserably. His damage output was bad, and his character skill was uninspiring, to say the least. The only redeeming quality about Guardian was his ultimate, which I think we can say objectively is pretty dang good. But in a game where the goal is to defeat enemies as quickly as possible, what good is a character who does bad damage and his only utility seems to be to resurrect teammates? His ultimate is one of the best in the game at resurrecting teammates. What if your teammates are actually good and not constantly dying? Then you sit there doing nothing, and this becomes a two-player game? That's how it felt, at least, playing Guardian early on. And I was frustrated. Because like I said, I thought his character design was super cool. Who doesn't want to play a humanoid bird? But after some of those early struggles, my opinion on Guardian has completely turned around. It started with some runs where I wasn't even playing as Guardian, but I had teammates who were Guardian. I experienced some teammates who absolutely were saving the day. I had one run in particular where we were fighting against Adele. We were close to winning, but one of my teammates and I both got downed at the same time. And all that was left was our Guardian. I was convinced that we were going to lose then and there, because I'm pretty sure the Guardian was out of flasks, and all that he was really doing was tanking the boss. But it turned out that that's all that he needed to do. I watched him tank the boss, do some guard counters, and it seemed like he may have even been increasing his health a little bit through some passives or some relics. And all that he did was draw out the fight until he was able to get his ultimate. Once he got his ultimate, he resurrected both of us. I was Iron Eye, had my ultimate, was able to use my ultimate and defeat the boss right then and there. Our Guardian literally won us that fight by simply staying alive. That's probably one of the first times that I saw a Guardian being really impactful. And it made me wonder, is there more to this character than what I initially gave it credit for? So I decided to give Guardian another chance. And when I did that, I started winning. Not to say that I was incapable of winning with other characters. I had, of course, won some runs with other characters before, but I really didn't expect to win with Guardian. I'd struggled with him so much early on. I went back to play Guardian and with kind of the worst expectations, thinking that there was no way that I would be able to win with him, and just wanted to play him and see how it went. But I started winning. It wasn't always pretty, but I was winning. And in a game with a lot of characters who can do a lot of damage, Guardian's biggest strength is his ability to stay alive. You should often be the last one on your team to die. And if you're not, it's probably because you try to tank something for your team, which also is not necessarily bad. I know on Adele, I've gotten eaten more on Guardian than probably any other character. And now maybe that shows that I'm not a good Guardian, I don't know. But Guardian also doesn't have much mobility. He's designed to kind of sit there and tank. And his passive reinforces that. His passive means that he can shield while using very little stamina. And there's a relic that you can get where his passive does damage when you're using it. So at that point, your shielding literally begins to damage the enemy. When combined with relics that give health regeneration upon successful shielding, or weapon passives that provide health regeneration, it should be very hard to kill Guardian. And his passive is not exactly a passive. It is an active ability, as it requires some work on your part to get it to work. So the game's characterization of it as a passive is a bit misleading, to say the least. In order to use his passive, you must push circle or dodge while blocking. If you time it right, you'll have a stronger block that doesn't use up any stamina at all. The cost is that your stamina will start to deplete if you're still holding up your block, but the trade-off is worthwhile. And while using his preferred weapon, the halberd, you can attack while blocking. The ability to attack and block at the same time is an important one for Guardian's playstyle. I believe that his passive is the most important part of his kit. He was designed to be the immovable object and to take hits from the enemy without faltering. His damage is low, but his defense makes up for it. Guardian is a support tank. He is not meant to be the primary damage dealer on your team. Leave that role to anyone else on your team, other than maybe Revenant. Guardian's ability, while it can seem underwhelming, adds to his support role nicely. It lifts up and stuns smaller mobs, allowing for you or your teammates to easily follow up. It also has a short cooldown, meaning that it can be used often. The downside to his ability is that it doesn't do a ton of damage, but it is very good for crowd control on smaller mobs. And it gets even better if you have a relic equipped that increases the duration. One note on relics is that I think it's very important to talk about relics, particularly with Guardian, because it's hard to talk about Guardian without talking about relics. Admittedly, his relics might be more beneficial for him and his playstyle than for any other character. So I will be discussing relics a bit. And of course, while relic can be very impactful for really any character, for Guardian, they might be better than anybody else, or more important than for anybody else. I would argue that using the relic that increases the duration of his ability is a must-have for Guardian, because that is a game changer. When you increase the duration of his ability, the ability then pulls enemies to the center while they're being constantly damaged, again providing for easy follow-up. Ability for you or your teammates to hit 3-4 enemies at a time, because they're all at the center of the circle. The biggest weakness of his ability, whether with or without the relic, is against big enemies or bosses. You know, most of the bosses, because they won't be stunned by the ability, and it will turn into something that does a small amount of damage and not much else. Really nothing else. I have staggered bosses with his ability, particularly when I have the relic equipped that increases the duration of the ability. Oh, they need to be close to being stance broken for that to happen. But it is still a reason, in my opinion, to actually use it. It's still worthwhile to use it. It does a little bit of damage. It does a little bit of stance damage. Maybe you'll get lucky and stagger them if they're close to being staggered. So even when you're fighting the big bosses, don't hold on to it because you don't think you're going to get any value out of it. It does something. And of course, the last piece of his kit, his ultimate, is one of the best in the game. It will always resurrect teammates as long as it hits them, even at 3 bars. If you hold it when you land, your teammates remain immune to damage for a period of time. One relic that you'll probably want to use is the relic that provides teammates health regeneration while holding your ultimate. Then you can use it to great effect before your teammates even die, and it will heal them to full if they stay within the circle. In most circumstances, it will be better to prevent them from dying rather than resurrecting them, because as we know, dying and having to be resurrected comes with a cost. It's more difficult to resurrect your teammates every time that they die. All that you need to do to hold your ultimate is to either hold the button from the time that you start the ultimate, or you can wait and push down the button, push down your ultimate button again while you're in the air, and continue holding it while you land. It will stay in the ground, and you'll have a visual where your teammates are immune, and if you have that relic, they'll be healed as well. Another relic that you will probably want to equip is the relic that provides increased ultimate charge upon successful guarding. This is arguably the most important relic to have equipped for Guardian. If you're doing your job and blocking, it helps build your ult even quicker. All combined, that's a very strong ultimate. And if you're not holding your ultimate for purposes of helping out your teammates, it is one of the quickest ultimates in the game to build. By default, you're left with about 20 to 25% ultimate charge after using your ultimate. So you don't need to be cautious about saving it only for down teammates. This ultimate does build very quickly. You should still be able to use it multiple times in a boss fight. So in my opinion, especially as you start to get better and start to play with better teammates who aren't dying as much, who don't need you to always have that ability up, that ultimate up, you don't need to be saving it for down teammates. You can use it, get a good burst of damage. It still does quite a bit of damage. It's not going to do a huge burst of damage, but it does a good amount of damage. If you have your ultimate and you're waiting to save it because you're worried about your teammates dying most of the time, unless it looks like your teammates are about to die, you might just want to use it. You're going to get it back pretty quickly. And going back to the story that I told earlier, that's exactly what my Guardian did in that situation. You know, he sat there and he was able to just stay alive until he got his ultimate back. Even if you're not doing a ton of damage, he can get a little bit of chip damage in and wait for that ultimate to build. And you're going to be able to use it at some point. If you rush over and you're just trying to save your teammates by whacking away at them, especially if they have 3 bars, you might be more likely to die than if you're sitting there and using your shield and trying to tank everything. Don't be too cautious about saving your ultimate. It's very powerful. Saying that Guardian's primary role is to stay alive probably makes it seem like he's easy to play. I actually don't think that's the case at all. I think that he has a higher skill floor, and I base that partly off of my own personal experience. If he had a low skill floor, if he were an easy hero to play, I could have picked him up right away and started winning games on him. But there is a certain amount of value that he provides to your team, even in primarily being the character that stays alive. Maybe doesn't do quite as much damage as other teammates. You can find a way to get value on that. And going back to what I said earlier, part of how I found out that Guardian is actually a good character is because I had multiple runs. I gave the story the one, but I had other runs where we were making it. I think I had 2 or 3 wins in a row early on, actually, where I had teammates who were playing as Guardian. And it made me look at it and say, hey, maybe this character is actually kind of good. I don't know. Again, part of the reason why I started playing as him. But I do think he has a higher skill floor. And part of that's because of his passive ability, which his passive is not explained super well. And his passive requires some timing. And until you get the relic that does damage to the enemy when you're using your passive, it can be a little bit hard to tell when the passive activates. Although the biggest giveaway for that, in some respect, can be when you see your stamina decreasing when you're just holding up your shield. And speaking about his high skill floor, his passive is more of an additional ability. Whereas, for example, with, say, Raider and Recluse, they have passive abilities that really aren't passive abilities, where their passive abilities are innate to their character skill, where without those quote-unquote passives, their character skills wouldn't work. But Guardian is very different, where his passive doesn't work unless you're actively using it. And Guardian needs to make use of his passive because his dodge is easily the worst in the game. Look, if you're trying to be the damage dealer on your team, you are probably going to struggle. And if you're trying to go out on your own, if you're trying to be that damage dealer, you might be dying more often. But working to enable your teammates will get you the best results. That's why I said before, he is a support. He's there to support his teammates. He supports his teammates through some crowd control, through some tanking, through staying alive. He supports his teammates a little bit less through the damage that he deals. And that's okay. That's how he was designed, and he can be very, very good in that role. And I never thought I would say this after my early experiences, but Guardian is actually a lot of fun to play. Once you learn how to use him, once you get past that skill floor. Give Guardian a try. Maybe after you put some time into the game, understand the game a little bit better, give Guardian a try. Think about what you need to succeed with him. And even if you play a little bit more passively with him than what you're maybe used to, that might be the way to go. You're not playing him like Raider. There's a reason, he's a different character. That's okay. Hope you liked it. Hope that this gets you to play Guardian a little bit more. This teaches you a little bit more about Guardian and what the Guardian on your team is actually doing. They're not throwing when they're picking Guardian. Don't worry, you have a chance. You can still win that game. But hope you enjoyed it. I'll see you in the next one.